A new roguelite adventure is just about to hit full release now. This one's a bit of a blast from the past, and I'm talking about DESECRATORS. DESECRATORS is put together by Woodhound, and that is only 2 individuals. This is an incredibly small development team, and therefore I am incredibly impressed. This is a very strong 8 out of 10 experience, and let me tell you why. Firstly, I want to acknowledge a bit of my bias here. This game is absolutely inspired by the late 90s kind of shooter-adventure games that some may not be so familiar with. Myself, on the other hand, I played a lot of Descent as a very small child, and that almost one-to-one reminds me of this game exactly. You're flying a 6-axis free little ship. You're flying those through different environments, generally in space, some derelict ships, that kind of thing. And you're shooting different other enemy ships, some of them being robots, some of them being other marauders like yourself. And that's where the gameplay loop really comes in strong, because this has the potential for a real roguelite scenario where you're going to be coming back and back to the same locations over and over again, but the procedural generation really changes that up each time. So it doesn't really feel like you're hitting that same derelict freighter, that same abandoned mine over and over again. You will be hitting those same named locations because it's a roguelite, but each time you're there, the different corridors, everything's all remixed, and the enemies are still keeping it fresh enough. There is not a whole lot of elements that are going into this randomly, or rather procedurally generated mixer, but I don't really find that to be a problem. I'm about the 10-hour mark. I could see that maybe at 20, 30 you might get tired of finding some of these same enemies over and over again, but I found because of the procedural generation, that really wasn't an issue for me. What I enjoyed is turning the difficulty down a bit, if I'm being honest, and running through and really just destroying everything, exploring everything, and trying to really get a grasp of what the environment is, what is the story behind this game, and that's where one of the kind of negatives comes in. Although it's not a huge negative, there really isn't much of a storyline here. We're in the far future, we're exploring the Milky Way galaxy, and we're basically just marauding and pillaging all of the different scraps of civilization past. So it's a bit dark, but the story really doesn't come into account other than you're finding other marauders along the way. Sometimes the procedural generation will tell you, hey look, there's going to be a challenge here, you're going to have to fight some foes, and there's going to be some of your peers here. Which is really interesting, because you'll see them fighting the station defenses just the same as you, and it gets into a really big mix-up, a big dust ball of combat sometimes. Each time you defeat these enemies, or you get just simply to the end of the map, you come back to this little hub area. Just the same as a roguelite, you're going to be buying some of these upgrades to keep you stronger and scaling as you go further and further down this progress path here. But I found there was a lot of reward to that. There was real incentive to go around and explore every little nook and cranny of each location that I visit, because as you destroy more enemies and as you collect more of these relics, that's what gives you the points to then go and upgrade your guys. So that makes it so much more enjoyable. The moment you start getting multiple weapons, and well, you're not running out of ammo first and foremost, but you're much stronger and you're zipping around this little area, that's where the real fun of the game comes in. What it really lacks in presentation capabilities, this game doesn't look very pretty, and it sounds a little bit aged, but it really makes up for that in that roguelite experience, that loop, coming time and time again to these locations that are just sprinkled up a little bit differently, and that challenge, the difficulty bar, luckily is very forgiving, you can slide that down, but regardless, your time in this game is going to be spent seeing that hub and that title screen again and again, but being happy for it each time.
Incoming.